There's a brutal reality most men don't want to accept because no one has taught them. Women don't attack you with fists. They attack you with words. And they do it so well that many men don't even realize they're being controlled. You think you're having a conversation, but in reality, she's testing your frame. Every shame tactic is a trap designed to make you doubt your power. And here's where most men lose before the real game even starts. They try to defend themselves. But dangerous men, Machiavellian men, don't defend. They deflect. They reverse the frame. They turn every attack into silent leverage. In this video, I'll break down 6 psychological tactics women use to shame men, and exactly how to outsmart every single one. Stay until the end, because every tactic you fail to recognize will be used against you, sooner or later. This video might just save years of your life. Let's begin. Tactic 1. The Youre insecure attack. Weakening your standards. Here's your first battlefield. Every time you set a boundary, you challenge the hidden power dynamic. And very often, that's when she launches one of the most effective psychological traps. She doesn't attack your rule. She attacks your right to have rules. It sounds harmless at first. You're insecure. You're being paranoid. You must have trust issues. But here's the real game behind those words. By framing your standards as weakness, she attempts to shame you into silence. She wants you to question yourself, to hesitate, to soften. Here's an example all men can face. You calmly tell your woman you don't accept her going on late-night vacations with male friends. Instead of discussing your reasoning, she cuts straight to your identity. Wow, you must be really insecure. At that moment, most men collapse. They rush to defend. No, I trust you. It's not like that. I care about us. But the instant you start defending, you've already surrendered your frame. You shifted from leader to justifier. Machiavelli warned us centuries ago when he said, "It is better to act and face accusation than to hesitate and lose power through inaction." He means this: power is lost when you give room to doubt. Once you hesitate, others seize the opportunity to reshape the narrative. In relationships, this is exactly how shame works. She reframes your boundary as weakness, so you lower your guard, and she keeps control over the frame. And by the time she takes control, you're either trapped in that dynamic or near the end of the relationship. Now here's your Machiavellian strategy. The moment you hear you're insecure, do not explain. Instead, hold the line with calm, surgical precision. No, I simply know my standards. And then, silence. Let her sit in that tension, because the man who holds stillness forces the other to break first. Remember, if your standards crumble every time you're challenged, you were never leading, you were negotiating. Now let's move forward, because the next tactic is even more subtle and far more dangerous if you don't recognize it. Tactic 2. Rewriting masculinity. Now you enter one of the most dangerous manipulations. When she doesn't attack your boundary directly, she attacks your identity as a man. It sounds like this: a real man would let me have my freedom. A real man would support me no matter what. At first glance, it sounds like advice. But don't be fooled. This is not advice. This is psychological warfare. She's not telling you how to be better. She's trying to rewrite the very definition of masculinity, but in a way that serves her interest. Here's an example any man can face, whether you're single, dating, or married. You calmly tell your woman you're not comfortable with her spending weekends clubbing with her single girlfriends. She responds immediately. A real man wouldn't try to control me like that. Now here's where most men collapse. They freeze. They start to question themselves. Am I being too controlling? Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm not secure enough. And that self-doubt is exactly where the power shifts. Remember this: when someone controls the definition of who you are, they control you. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "It is much safer to be feared than loved when one of the two must be lacking. Because love can be weaponized to soften you. Fear, or better said, respectful distance, protects your leadership. If you let her redefine what real man means, you've already lost your frame. You're no longer leading, you're reacting." Now here's your Machiavellian strategy. When you hear a real man would, don't explain, don't justify, don't argue. Simply say, I define what kind of man I am, and that man has his own standards. And then, silence. Because a leader doesn't debate his nature, he embodies it. Here's your next powerful insight to burn into your mind. When you need someone else's approval to feel like a man, you've already given them authority over your life. Now let's move forward, because the next tactic is designed to make you feel guilty for protecting your power. And if you fall for it, you'll lose everything. Tactic 3. The Youre Controlling reversal. Guilt weaponized. Here comes one of the most dangerous emotional ambushes. She won't fight your decision directly. She'll attack the morality of your leadership. The moment you take a stand to protect your peace, your space, or your standards, she strikes with one word: you're controlling. At first, it sounds like a serious accusation. But make no mistake, this is not about you being oppressive. This is about using guilt as a weapon to make you lower your standards. Here's an example that any man can face, whether you're dating, in a long-term relationship, or married. You calmly say, I don't want my relationship constantly exposed to people who bring toxicity. I don't want you spending hours venting with your bitter friends or family members who disrespect our relationship. She instantly fires back. Why are you trying to control who I talk to? I have the right to my own friendships. Now here's where most men crumble. They fear looking possessive. They start apologizing. I didn't mean to control you. I just want what's best. And in that moment, they hand her full psychological leverage. Remember this: the easiest way to make a man surrender his leadership is to make him feel guilty for having it. Machiavelli knew human nature very well. He said, a wise prince must imitate both the fox and the lion to frighten wolves, the fox to recognize traps. And this is a trap. You're not controlling her life. You're controlling what enters yours. Because here's a brutal truth few men ever dare to face. You don't need to control her behavior. You need to control access to your own kingdom. Now, when she says, you're controlling, don't flinch. Look her directly in the eye and respond with unshakable calm. I'm not controlling you. I'm controlling my life and what I allow inside it. Then stop. No debate, no defense. Your boundary speaks for itself. A man who debates his own leadership already doubts his own authority. Now let's move forward, because the next tactic uses your desire to appear strong as the very rope that ties your hands. Tactic 4. You're afraid of strong women. Masculine neutralization. Here comes one of the oldest tricks in the psychological warfare of relationships. She frames your leadership as weakness. Whether you're on your first date, deep into a relationship, or years into a marriage, this one can strike at any stage. Picture this. You're with a woman who keeps testing your frame. She talks over you. She challenges your decisions. She throws subtle jabs to see how you react. You correct her calmly, with controlled authority. That's not how I operate. Suddenly she fires back. See? You just can't handle a strong woman. Here's where most men get trapped, and it happens across every stage of life. The single man fears being labeled insecure. The boyfriend fears creating tension. The husband fears disturbing the peace at home. And so, they bend. They defend. No, I love strong women, And the moment you defend against her frame, you've already stepped into submission. Remember this, the most dangerous way to disarm a man is not to fight his power directly, but to shame him for using it. Machiavelli saw this dynamic centuries ago. He warned, "The ruler who tolerates disorder invites his own destruction." Rebellion tolerated is rebellion encouraged. Her strength isn't strength. It's disguised rebellion against your masculine frame. Because real strength in a woman complements leadership, it doesn't challenge it constantly. As a man, your role is not to compete with her energy. Your role is to rule your own world with clarity. Tactic 5. The "you're afraid of commitment" emotional blackmail. Now we enter one of the most seductive and dangerous forms of pressure. The emotional trap disguised as love. Here's your scenario. You've been seeing a woman, whether you're casually dating or in a relationship where she wants to accelerate things. You express calmly, "I'm not ready to commit at this stage," or "I don't want to do that with you," like, for example, buying a house. Suddenly her tone shifts, her eyes soften, and with just the right blend of accusation and concern, she delivers, "You're just scared of commitment. You're afraid to love." Here's the trap behind those words. She isn't questioning your feelings. She's challenging your masculinity. She's framing your strategic patience as cowardice. Remember this. When people cannot control your decisions, they attack your identity. This tactic works on many men, at every stage. The single man fears losing the opportunity. The boyfriend fears upsetting her emotions. The husband fears destabilizing the family. And so they surrender. They say, "Okay, maybe I am being too cautious." And at that moment, they hand her the keys to timing, pacing, and future control. Machiavelli gave us the cold truth. Men must never allow themselves to be hurried into acts of folly by anyone. He knew that decisions made under pressure rarely serve the man's long-term power. Because commitment is not romantic. It's a permanent power contract. When you give it too soon, you hand away leverage that cannot be easily recovered. Here's your actionable move. When she says, "You're just scared of love," respond with calm certainty and with diplomacy. "No, I value commitment too much to enter it under pressure. I move when I see clarity, not emotion." No long debate. No defense. You remain the man who controls timing, because timing is power. Now let's move forward. Because the final tactic is so subtle, so invisible, it destroys men before they even realize they were being tested. Tactic 6. The silent shame. Emotional pressure without words. Here we enter one of the most advanced forms of manipulation. The battlefield of silence. Here's your scenario. You've calmly set a boundary. You've made a decision that protects your peace. You've refused to bend under emotional games. But instead of an argument, she withdraws. She sighs deeply. She looks distant. She answers coldly. She becomes busy or emotionally unavailable. Notice something important here. There are no words, only invisible pressure. Remember this. When a woman cannot win through logic, she tries to win through your guilt. This tactic is deadly because it attacks your emotional core. The single man starts to question, did I mess up? Should I chase her now? The boyfriend starts to worry. Maybe I was too harsh? The husband starts to feel responsible. I need to fix this before it escalates. And the moment you react emotionally, the moment you rush to explain, to apologize, or to chase, she regains control of the frame. Machiavelli explains this with brutal clarity. It is much safer to be feared than loved, when one of the two must be lacking. Because emotional distance triggers your need for harmony. But when you chase harmony too early, you forfeit dominance. The silent shame isn't her pain, it's her weapon. She's forcing you into self-correction without ever asking. Here's your actionable move. When the silent shame appears, you stay emotionally still. You continue your life. You reward maturity, not passive aggression. You may say, when you're ready to speak openly, I'm here. Nothing more. Your unshakable calm becomes the pressure she cannot escape. Now let's bring this to a close. With the clarity, the calm, and the power most men never reach, but every man needs to master. Once you learn to spot these tactics, once you see how shame is weaponized, once you stop reacting like a man desperate for approval, you don't just protect your frame, you rise far above the emotional battlefield itself. Here's the truth. You were never losing because you lacked value. You were losing because you gave women the power to define your value. Most men break, not because they're weak, but because they never realized they were being tested. Machiavelli never taught submission. He taught sovereignty. He taught that true leadership isn't loud. It's silent, disciplined, and impossible to corrupt. The man who defines his own standards. The man who holds the line calmly, without rage or justification. The man who no longer fears her emotions, her distance, or her silence. He becomes the one thing women secretly crave but rarely find, a man who cannot be moved. Because here's the ultimate law. When you cannot be shamed, you cannot be controlled. And when you cannot be controlled, you rule without needing to dominate. You don't chase peace. You embody peace. You don't argue for respect. You radiate respect. You don't demand loyalty. You attract loyalty without asking. At the highest level, your calm becomes your sword. Your standards become your armor. Your detachment becomes your kingdom. And once you operate like this, they can no longer weaponize your guilt. Because the man who cannot be shamed becomes the man no one can control. If this opened your eyes and you're serious about becoming the man who's in full control of his life, my book is now available. The Undeniable Man, Built to be Chosen. It's a strategic guide for men who want to attract, lead, and dominate in their love life and beyond. Whether you're single or in a relationship, no fluff, no tricks, just pure, powerful strategy that will set you apart from 99% of men, and that you will actually use every day. The link is in the description. And if this video spoke to you, don't just keep your thoughts in your head. Write a comment, even just a few words. It helps you remember these lessons, and it might help someone else too. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this content, and share it with someone who, in your eyes, needs it right now. Just trust your instinct. We're all trying to get clearer, more solid inside. So let's build minds that don't break.